Hey everyone, it's Scott Hansen from NFL Red Zone reminding you to watch Sportsballers, the podcast that gets you caught up on everything Washington sports and beyond.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Sportsballers podcast. My name is Eric. I'm joined by Cory and Evan as always. How are you fellas doing today?
Doing well.
Yeah, doing pretty good. A little tired, but, a little hungry.
Aren't we all? Yeah, well, it's a little later in the week than usual. We normally record on Wednesdays, but we got pushed by a day for reasons that I'll explain shortly. But nevertheless, we still got a nice array of sports topics to get through. We'll have some NFL news regarding the draft, as well as some new rules that have been introduced, as well as discussing Alex Smith's retirement. We'll get into that a little bit as well. We've also got some information to get through regarding our baseball teams and how they've performed over the last week since we last spoke to you.
We don't have to talk about that.
We don't have to, but we will because that's what we do.
I would rather not talk about it personally.
I know, but I'm thrilled to talk about Cory's team because
I thought you were talking about our fantasy teams.
We can talk about that too, but that's more just a little passing note.
That's on our list.
I don't think the audience of 4 is all that interested in grave detail of our fantasy season, but I did put it on the list just for posterity. But we'll also get into the epic Dodgers-Padres series, which is something I didn't think I would say in early April, but the series was really good, and we'll get another series starting tonight that we'll run through Sunday. But first, we will discuss some NBA stuff, as is my typical routine when I host. I've got a few things that have happened over the last week or so. Yesterday, Steph Curry's 30-point streak ended at 11 games. Steph Curry had scored 30 points in 11 straight games as the oldest individual to do that since Kobe Bryant did it 10 straight games. He now has the record for most 30-point games in a row for somebody 33 and older. But he struggled last night against the Wizards in Golden State's loss in Washington, which I attended. I was at the game.
Oh, really?
Yes, it was the first game that fans were allowed to be back in Capital One Arena. So I said, hey, let's go. Steph Curry's coming to town. It's going to be fun. I figured it was one of two things could happen. Either the Warriors would win because Steph lit the Wizards up, or Steph has an off night and the Wizards would win. And Steph had an off night, and the Wizards won. So
those are pretty much the two options.
Yes, and it was looking like the option A and B were both not going to happen because Steph was struggling, and yet the Wizards were still down 11 with 6 minutes left in the game. I'm like, really? I came to this game expecting Steph to torch the Wizards. He doesn't, and yet they're still getting beat by double digits. But the Wizards were able to rally in the fourth quarter.
That's surprising then that they ended up winning, because even Steph on an off night, you would think, given an 11-point advantage with 6 minutes left, would be able to fend off a comeback by a team as bad as the Wizards.
Oh, I was shocked. I couldn't believe it when I was lamenting the fact that they went down 11 with 6 minutes left, and I saw Curry getting up off the bench to re-enter the game at that point. I was like, well, this is bad news. But they rallied. Steph continued to struggle from the field. He turned the ball over a lot, too. It was just a really bad night for Curry. I hadn't seen him play that poorly in a long time. But frankly, I was glad he did because I was rooting for Washington to win, and they did. So I was happy with the end result. It got very interesting at the end. There were some turnovers, some mayhem, but Wizards ended up holding on and winning by 4 points. But I still feel like, regardless of the fact that the streak is over and Curry didn't have a good game last night, what he had done over the previous month is just insane. I mean, the fact that we've talked about Golden State and how they pretty much have no offensive options. We've been through that this year with Klay Thompson being injured, and the fact that they haven't adequately restocked the team with significant talent since Kevin Durant left, which, again, you're not going to replace Kevin Durant, but you could at least put somebody on the court that's competent. But that's been a bit of a struggle for Golden State as well. But despite that, Curry is averaging like 38 points a game And he was doing it on such ruthless efficiency. It wasn't just like he was putting up 40 shots to get these points. He was scoring them within the flow of the offense unless he got hot, and then he started hunting his shots and started burying them left and right, which seemed to happen for 3 straight weeks. And I don't know how to feel about MVP talk regarding Curry, because me personally, I feel like the MVP ought to be on a team that's winning, and this is a 500 team. But I won't hesitate to say that he's been the best player in basketball this year. I think that that's the case, full stop. I just think there's no chance that he's going to be awarded the MVP given the situation where his team is clawing for a playoff spot, where someone like Nikola Jokic has his team in a top 4 seed and has been tremendous himself this year. But nevertheless, this is an impressive run with Steph, and I think it portends good things for Golden State because, like I said, Curry is 33, and yet he's still lighting it up. And his style of play seems like it's just going to age so well, because when you get older, you lose athleticism, you lose burst. But Steph's game is based more on hand-eye coordination and IQ and skill and handle and stuff like that. That doesn't fade like athleticism does. So he's going to be able to continue to do this as long as he stays healthy, probably for a few more years before any type of decline starts to kick in. So I think that Golden State fans should at least be encouraged by that, because they were probably figuring they had maybe 1 or 2 years left of Steph being in his prime. But he could realistically extend that prime 3 or 4 years, I think.
Sound like you're about to describe Steph Curry as a coach on the floor or something.
Not quite going to go the white guy tropes with him, but he is obviously spectacular. We all know that. We spent plenty of time on this podcast giving him love. We discussed the greatest peaks last week, which involved Steph Curry being on the list. So, but I even mentioned to Cory as soon as we signed off, maybe we shouldn't have had Curry in the greatest peaks, because maybe he's having his peak now. I was saying that in jest, but he has been tremendous this year. His numbers do resemble his unanimous MVP season. The only difference is that the unanimous MVP season, the team won 73 games, whereas this year they're 500. So speaking of the Wizards, though, they do stink, but they've been good lately. They've won 6 straight. They played a very good game yesterday, because I'm not just going to say that Steph Curry struggled just because he had a bad night. The Wizards had a good defensive plan. They stuck to it, and they were able to take Steph away in a lot of situations. They double-teamed him. They harassed him into turnovers. They didn't give him very many clean looks, which was the end result was he had a bad game and they won. Now, he could easily have had a good game despite that, because we know what he's capable of. But
we all saw the highlight from earlier in the week, or was it late last week, where he was like being fouled facing the bench and still managed to toss one over his shoulder, nothing but net.
Yeah, with his left hand.
Right.
So
like,
there's that.
What?
So sometimes there's nothing you can do, but you still have to try. And the effort level was there to potentially induce a bad game, and they did. So they deserve credit for that as well. They've had a lot of really grinded out good games, something I didn't expect to see from Washington. Russell Westbrook is playing excellent basketball. He's really stepped it up after the All-Star break. I do believe that he was dealing with some injuries that were holding him back a little bit. I mean, he's still not going to be able to shoot at a high clip. He still struggles from outside. He's not a great free throw shooter. He can be reckless with the ball. But that athleticism, that burst, that passing aggression that he's got that allows him to be such a spectacular playmaker, that seems to be back. He's ripped off, I don't know how many triple-doubles in a row. And as you guys know, I'm not a big triple-double guy, but when you're racking up 20 rebound games or 17 assist games, you got to be doing something right. I mean, I realize the ball's in his hands a ton, but he's still producing at that clip, and he's not being asked to be the best player on the court. So when you're still able to stuff the stat sheet, despite the fact that Bradley Beal is the offensive focus, that says that you are playing a role at a high level that's helping your team win. So the Wizards have climbed up to the 10th spot, which means that they will have a chance to play in the play-in tournament if that holds. Now, they would have to win 2 straight games to get into the actual tournament, but given how the Wizards season started, this is a win. Like, nobody thought that the Wizards would be in this position, so I'm actually kind of excited to see this team with Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal playing in sort of winner-take-all type of games. And obviously, winner-take-all is used loosely here because you're probably just competing to get splattered by either the Sixers or the Nets, depending on how the seeding falls for you. But nevertheless, it's still going to be exciting to see just because there's star power. And I feel the same way in the West with Golden State being in the mix. The idea of having Stephen Curry in high leverage games in April and May is pretty valuable for the NBA. And it's kind of saved the season, the regular season, at least as far as an entertainment factor goes, just because of all the injuries we've seen to LeBron James and Anthony Davis and to the Nets and all these other teams where these star players are missing in action.
And it's what, the 7, 8, 9, and 10 seeds that play in that little play-in tournament?
Yeah, and the structure is a little bit strange because you probably expect the 7 and 10 to play and the 8 and 9 to play, but it's actually the 7 and 8 play each other, and the winner of that game takes the 7 seed, and then the 8 seed plays the winner of the 9-10 game to decide who plays for the 8 seed. So that's how that goes. So it really does give an advantage to the 7-8 teams because they just have to win 1 out of 2 to get in, which is fair because it's an 8-team tournament. You're giving 2 other teams just an outside shot of getting in. They should have the bigger hill to climb to get in.
Right, and the 8 seed should have that opportunity to, because the 8 seed is expected to lose to the 7 seed. They should still have an opportunity then to beat the other team. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think that's, it's an extra game that the 8 seed would have to play, but I think that's honestly the best way to do it.
Yeah, I also think if you're the 8th, 9th, and 10th seeded teams, it should be harder for you to make the playoffs anyway. Are you really a playoff caliber team if you finish in 8th place?
More so than 10th place.
Well, by NBA standards, the 8th seed is playoff caliber. They do get in. I believe Michael Jordan's Bulls got in as the 8th seed one year at 30 and 52. So that's just the nature of the beast.
30 and 52.
Yes. This is just how the NBA always been. They have a big playoff, which means you get a lot of mediocre teams that usually end up as just a stain on somebody's pants as they blow right through them.
Good Lord.
Just boom.
If the Orioles were in the NBA, they would make the playoffs every year.
Maybe, probably, and they'd get smoked. But we'll move on to some actual NBA playoff teams, namely the Brooklyn Nets, who are currently the 2 seed in the East, but I've been hesitant to be concerned about them because of their injuries. There's all this talk about how, Kevin Durant's hurt. He missed 2 months. I'm like, okay, but he's going to be back by the time the playoffs roll around. So what do I care? And then James Harden goes out with a hamstring injury. He's going to be out for 10 days. And I'm like, okay, but he's going to be back before the playoffs start. But then Kevin Durant came back, and then 5 games later, he got hurt again. And granted, this is a thigh contusion that shouldn't leave him out for long. But the fact is that he was on a minutes restriction when he returned. And he was trying to ramp up to full speed. And now he's out, and that delays him again. And James Harden had a setback with his hamstring injury, which is probably going to put him out for a few more weeks, despite the fact that they thought he would only maybe miss 1.5 to 2. So I'm not quite hitting the panic button like a lot of people are, because they still can get everybody back for the postseason, which I think they're going to need. But it's getting to the point where another setback and they're in trouble. Time is running out. I mean, the playoffs start a month from now.
The playoffs start a month from now?
Yes.
Oh, how much long? I mean, it seems so long.
Well, the season started late December, so they've crammed a regular season that usually takes 6 months into 5. But normally the playoffs start around this time. The playoffs would typically be going. But because of COVID, and they had to delay the playoffs last year 4 months, which means that they had to push the playoffs back to start in May. But so they've got a month to get it together. And there's obviously questions about when they finally get on the floor together, can they make it work? Do they have the chemistry? But I think that at least for the first round of the playoffs, even if they play the Miami Heat, which is where they're currently slated to play, I think that they're going to end up being able to find a way to beat them if they have all those guys on the floor. It's the later rounds that they've kind of set themselves up for potential disaster because they have to go through a really tough slate. If they have to play Miami, Miami won the East last year, and while their record has been suppressed this year because they've had a ton of COVID issues that have resulted in them not having their guys out there, they've played weeks and weeks worth of games shorthanded, which has caused them to fall down in the standings. That's still a tough first-round matchup for a team. And then they would have to play Milwaukee in the second round as the 3 seed. and then they'd have to travel to Philadelphia for 4 out of 7 to beat them. That's, for a team that's got a lot of injury problems, that's a big time load to take, especially with those physical teams that know that those teams are going – that Nets team does not have particularly durable players at the moment. They're going to beat the hell out of them with no regard. They're just going to throw everything at Kevin Durant to see if he wears down. They're going to try to wear down James Harden as well. And you know how Kyrie Irving is, and Kyrie Irving's flaky as hell, but he also has a history of physical injuries too. He can be taken out of a game if he gets beat up. None of these guys are exactly what you would call durable. So I do have some concerns there, but I'm not quite freaking out yet just because there is just enough time for them to get it right.
Okay.
I think that does it for the NBA, to be honest. There's not really a whole lot else going on other than everybody's injured. We discussed Jamal Murray's injury last week, although the Nuggets have won 4 straight since he got injured, which good for them. But
really,
I still think that come playoff time, it's going to be a problem for them to not have him on the floor.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like it's a totally different ball game, and people have noted in the NBA that the offense has been dominating this year because of the shortened season, which means less practice time, which means less time for the coaches to be with the players to work on any type of schemes in between games for the upcoming opponents, which is going to go away in the postseason. In the playoffs, you're going to have to be able to beat people who have been preparing for you for 4 to 7 straight games. It's a totally different ballgame. So we'll move on to baseball. Let's discuss some Baltimore Orioles. The O's completed their road trip to Texas and Miami with a 3-2 record. They're going to come home to host the Athletics, who are rolling. After I trashed them for getting their asses kicked every single night, they've won, 11 straight games? And now they've vaulted into first place despite starting 1-7. Yeah. I mean, my goodness. But this is something...
1-7, now they're 12-7.
Doesn't this just seem like something the A's do, though? Like, this is their MO, where they just rip off winning streaks and say, hey, by the way, we're good. Y'all thought we sucked, but here we are. We're good. But hopefully the Orioles will be able to hold them at bay. I wouldn't count my chickens on that one.
I'm not either.
No expectations, but some good news. Matt Harvey got his first win as an Oriole. I thought he's pitched pretty well to start the season. He's had some bumps and bruises, but he's been capable at least on the mound, which is a pleasant surprise. Evan, what do you think about what the Orioles have done so far this year?
Well, I like the way Harvey's pitched, Matt Harvey, because Hunter Harvey hasn't pitched at all.
Right.
So Matt Harvey, he hasn't been great or really all that good, but he's been okay. And if you're pitching for the Orioles, okay is basically getting the Cy Young Award. Just don't be terrible, right? Don't be Zach Britton giving up 7 runs without recording it out. Just don't be that guy. Dylan Bundy. Never mind. It's been a long week. Let's see. So, I'm happy with the way the Orioles have done so far. We're 8-10. We look like crap at home and looked like, the 1970 Orioles on the road. I don't really understand what the deal is with that. That's a little strange.
Y'all just don't like Baltimore. Maybe y'all should consider relocating.
Well, I mean, they play better when they're not at home. So, I don't know what the deal is with that. The offense has been kind of shaky. I think that's been my main disappointment, is that the team just doesn't hit. Like, this team is supposed to hit, and they never hit the ball, ever. Right? We got guys batting 100 and 200 and stuff. And Chris Davis has been banished to parts unknown. Right? Chris Davis isn't out there stinking it up, because everybody else is not hitting the ball. So, their last 3 games, they've scored 0 and then 7 and then 0 runs. So, it's that can be a little frustrating. They've had a couple off days. We had to have our pitchers hit this week because, playing in a National League ballpark is so stupid. Just point me to one person who has paid $100 to sit behind home plate to watch the manager come out and make a double switch. Just find me that guy. Somebody.
Apparently it's the beauty of baseball, according to many. I think that
Actually, I think they usually pay more than $100 to sit behind home plate to watch that.
Oh, okay. Hundreds of dollars, yes.
No, sir, not me.
Love those bunts, don't we? Oh, my goodness.
Oh, they're beautiful.
I saw a really cool sacrifice squeeze yesterday, so...
I don't mind a squeeze. Squeezes are exciting because it's very ballsy. Like, it can go either way, and if you screw it up, you're hosed.
I mean, that's a high leverage play, a squeeze, but when you're just sacrificing a guy over to second...
Yeah, it doesn't quite have the same pop.
Yeah, that doesn't really have any sizzle with it at all.
Well,
especially not when there's one out already. That does frustrate me. Like, it's one thing when there's no outs and you're like, okay, let's get a guy in a scoring position. I can sort of accept that. But when there's already an out and you're going to give up an out to get a guy to second, what does that really do? Like, seriously, you're only giving yourself one chance now to drive him home instead of two.
Yeah, the entire purpose is almost to stay out of a double play situation, but you're giving up an out. The only reason it's no longer a double play situation is because you can't get 4 outs.
Right, exactly. Like that. I feel like is just like that's so just you're just being like a scaredy cat because I can't say a more expletive word on the air.
Yeah, I feel like manufacturing runs via the bunt. We know statistically it's counterproductive in most cases, but I feel like if you really want to, you're in a late game situation, then put your fastest guy on first to pinch run and steal the base. That's the way to do it because you can take that base without giving up the out.
Right.
Now, there's obviously the risk that he gets thrown out, but that's baseball. And stolen bases are exciting. Sacrifice bunts are not.
It's true.
Yeah. I love those double switches and bunts.
Oh my God.
My goodness. Yeah, so the Orioles, I mean, we're doing better than some teams, one of which we'll get to shortly.
God.
Yeah. The one bad thing that's happened, so injuries. So Austin Hayes, who's always injured, finally comes back. I think he hurt his hamstring in the first weekend of the season, so he went on the injured list. He came back on, I believe, Tuesday night. And, literally that night, in the first inning, Anthony Santander rolls his ankle really bad. Now he's going on the injured list. So, it was looking like there was going to be it's going to be a bit crowded in the outfield. That's not going to happen because these guys just trade spots in terms of being injured or healthy. So I'm sure it looks like Santander is going to be out about a month or so. So by the time he comes back, I'm sure Hayes is going to hurt himself again, running headfirst into a wall or something crazy like that. So Eric, what is the deal with these injuries? Why? The same people are always hurt.
Well, some players are injury prone. I don't know what to tell you.
Okay.
Some guys get hurt, some guys don't.
Okay. Well, there is some good news. Outfield prospect Heston Kjerstad, who was the number 2 overall pick in the 2020 draft, he's been medically cleared and will report to the alternate site. He's been dealing with myocarditis after coming down with coronavirus. So that's very serious, and we're glad, he's doing all right, and he's actually going to get to play baseball. So I don't know how many games he's going to get to play because he hasn't played at all in over a year. So, he's got to get worked back up to speed and stuff. Let's see. And then Dean Kramer, starting pitcher. He's been optioned, sent down to the alternate site, not because he was pitching poorly, but because the Orioles didn't need him, and they wanted an extra bench spot because the Orioles had 2 off days this week. So Kramer will be back shortly. But Orioles Twitter had a meltdown, as it usually does, with the smallest things. Everybody freaked out, but Kramer's going to be back. He's pitched pretty good. He kind of loses home plate sometimes, every now and then. Like it just goes away. But just glad to have baseball. It's after what we went through last summer, sports wise, having a team to complain about is a privilege.
Absolutely, I agree. Especially when you know the team's supposed to stink and they're actually 8-10, which exceeds your expectations for this part of the season. But we'll move on to a team that is not exceeding expectations.
This team has been 0-18 in its past.
Yes, it has.
That happened.
Gross. That did happen. Ugly stuff. Speaking of ugly stuff, the New York Yankees, they stink. And someone's got to say it. I think we're all going to say it. So, Corey, what's going on with your squad? They're terrible.
All right. Where do you think, out of 30 teams in all of Major League Baseball, where do you think the Yankees rank in ERA as a pitching staff?
Probably.
They're not the worst, are they? There's no way they're the worst.
They rank sixth. Sixth the best.
Yeah, that doesn't pitched well, yeah.
Best. You would think a team that ranks sixth the best in ERA, we wouldn't be complaining about the pitching staff, which I'm going to, and we wouldn't be sitting here, what are we, 6 games below 500 right now? Like, this is ridiculous. Because what do you think our batting average is? Because the Red Sox lead all of Major League Baseball at 285. All right, that's pretty par for the course for the best batting average in baseball, high 200s. Where do you think the Yankees are?
I would say the Yankees would be around 31st if there were more than 30 teams. But I'm going to say 28th.
I'm cheating. They're 29th. They're batting 205 according to Fangraphs.
We are 29th. We are 29th. We are only ahead of the Chicago Cubs, and we are barely ahead of the Cleveland Indians, who we're starting a series against tonight and will probably get swept.
Oh, my goodness.
And the Brewers, who just swept the Padres.
Yeah.
How are we in the same area as the Brewers? We would have no chance against the Padres. Are you kidding me? This is pathetic. Our pitching staff is atrocious. Our bullpen has been fine. I've got no complaints really about our bullpen. They've been terrific. But our pitching staff, we've got Domingo Germán going tonight. He's got a 9.0 ERA. He's 0-2. He just got a call. He got a strikeout call against the first batter on a ball. It was 3 ball widths outside of the zone. Somehow got the strikeout call, and he's probably still going to end up getting rocked. In fact, we've just given up guys on second and third with 1 out in the first inning. So we're already done for this game.
Calling that game?
I don't know who the umpire is, but we're already screwed as far as I'm concerned for this game. Our hitters cannot hit. Giancarlo Stanton, do you guys want him? We will give you money to take him because we know for sure he isn't going to hit when he comes to New York to face us.
Orioles
what a waste of a player
for Chris Davis.
Perfect
matching contracts.
And the thing is here, Eric, you put in the show notes the team is mostly healthy, so that's not an excuse. Evan put that in there. I might actually counter that because that might be the excuse for us. Because if you look over the past couple of years during, seasons that were supposed to be quote unquote rebuilding years for us, where we didn't really expect to be, competing for a World Series. We figured we could be a playoff team, but it wasn't a guarantee, and we certainly wouldn't fight deep into the playoffs. We've ended up becoming really good teams despite all those injuries, but it might really be because of those injuries, because we've been forced to bring up players who ended up playing really well, at least in short stints. I mean, you look at the year that Greg Bird had to come up, and I know he's my guy. Y'all love to point out how Greg Bird is my guy, and he sucks, but he was really good for a short time when he first came up to New York. Talkman was a fantastic player for a short time when he first came up. Clint Frazier sucks this year, but when he came up to New York out of necessity because of injuries, he was always outstanding. But as soon as our guys get to New York and they know they're staying, they can't hit the broadside of a barn with their bat. I don't know what's going on, and it is so frustrating.
Boy, Gio Urshela.
Gio Urshela is one of the few sort of bright spots. If we got rid of every single position player on our team except for Aaron Judge, Gio Urshela, and DJ LeMahieu, I would be a happy camper.
And just went 0 for 6 the other guys in the order.
We wouldn't be any worse. We wouldn't be any worse than we are right now.
Yikes.
Yeah.
That wouldn't. I mean, it wouldn't make us better. I'm like, that's ridiculous. But we would not be any worse off.
Do you know who leads the New York Yankees in Fangraphs wins above replacement so far?
I don't really pay. I don't like look at Fangraphs the way that you do, so I don't know.
Is it Garrett Cole? Why would it not be?
Position players. It's Kyle Higashioka.
The sad thing is that doesn't entirely shock me because he's actually been pretty good in a few games where he showed up. He's up right now. He's batting ninth in today's game. He's catching for Herman. But like he should be the everyday catcher as far as I'm concerned because Sanchez is terrible behind the plate and he's not really hitting that well either right now.
Yeah.
Like the thing, like even, that's another player I didn't bring up before, but when Gary Sanchez first came up to the majors, he was phenomenal as a hitter, and his hitting, if anything, has regressed at least a little bit since then. It's certainly not better. And his catching was, it was not good, but you could live with it because he was a young player. You expected there to be some growing pains. He hasn't improved behind the dish as a defender at all since day one. That is inexcusable. He needs to go yesterday.
You've been hating on Gary Sanchez for the last 3 years. Straight up.
He hasn't given me any reason to stop.
It's amazing because you look at Sanchez's numbers, and his best seasons were, by Fangraphs WAR again, were 2016, where he only played in 53 games. I think that was his effective rookie year. And then 2017, the following year, he posted his best wins above replacement with 4.3, and it's been pretty awful since then. He somehow managed to be close to average in 2018 and 2019 before just, being disgracefully bad last season in the 60-game year. Like, my goodness, below replacement level is no place to live.
Oh, my
and this year,
Chance Cisco land.
Yes, Chance Cisco is not very good, and neither is Gary Sanchez apparently. But what's happened to your boy Gleyber Torres?
Yeah,
I mean, he was supposed to be MVP.
That's Labor Day every day. Not anymore.
That's a really good question. I mean,
you can't field the baseball
as a defender. It's frustrating because you don't really know where to put him because now we're starting to experiment with LeMahieu at first, but Torres still seems to be playing shortstop most nights, which I don't understand. Like, if you're going to put LeMahieu at first, that should be because you need to get Torres the hell out of the shortstop role and put him at second base, where he at least, will be moderately decent as a defender because he can't field at shortstop at all. I mean, he makes Derek Jeter look like he had the best range at shortstop of any shortstop ever. That's how bad Torres is. And
Gleyber Torres was instrumental in blowing that one game to the Orioles because he threw a ball in the dirt that got away and allowed a run to score.
He is a terrible defender, and his bat has not woken up at all this year. I mean, there's a reason why he was not included on my list of players that I would be okay just scrapping and getting rid of and starting over without him. Like, I hope that he can. Oh my goodness. The Yankees are down 4-0 now in the bottom of the first.
What? What is happening? Cleveland doesn't have a team. They traded them all away. 4-0. Who?
Actually, it looks like it's only 3-0. It looks like did they cut somebody down at the plate? I don't know what just happened, but yeah, it's not good. It's not good.
Yeah, I'm looking at Gleyber's offensive stats. He's only got 2 extra base hits this year. He's got 2 doubles. His slugging percentage is horrible. Like, he's batting 186, which is trash, but you could almost tolerate that slow start if he was at least throwing in some home runs every now and then. But he hasn't hit a single home run this year.
Yeah, no.
And so I'm kind of wondering, though, like with Gary Sanchez, everybody's been critical of his defense pretty much since day one, which is fair because he's not a very good defensive catcher. But when you get criticized for your defense so consistently, it maybe can have an effect on your approach at the plate. Like, almost you got to make up for it by pressing. And do you think that's possible for Gleyber Torres as well? Because, like you said, and I agree, I've watched enough of Gleyber Torres. Dude can't play defense to save his life. Do you think that that's factoring into the way he goes to the plate? Because, I mean, I know when I played baseball, it was a lot harder to go up in there and hit after I booted a ball.
Maybe, but the thing is with Glaber, he's struggled defensively since day one, but I don't feel like the criticism has been there the same way that it has been for Sanchez. Torres, people mostly accepted that as him being young, the same way that during Gary's first couple of years in the majors at catcher, we kind of accepted it as him. He's young, he'll get better. We don't need to freak out about it. This year has kind of been the first time that I've really seen people, get upset over Glaber's play and not, accept his youth as an excuse.
He's been there for 5 years.
I know he's been here for a few years, but in the past, when people would, come back and say, he's still young and, he's still kind of learning, people generally would kind of, let it go. And so the vitriol was not at this level over his defense. That's a relatively recent change. And I have a hard time giving him that as an excuse that so quickly after that change in public perception of his defense, it would already be having that kind of an impact on his offense. I feel like that's a bit of a cop-out if he's taking that and making that an excuse for his poor play at the dish.
Well, I'm not saying he's making an excuse. I'm just saying it could be a factor. But that also speaks to a problematic approach, I think, for you're talking about fans here mostly, but if a team looks at a shortstop and says, oh, he'll get better as he, gets more mature and gets more experience at shortstop, that's not how it works.
Yeah, no, especially not shortstop. Yeah.
You can't. Like baseball players that play, other than catcher, where there is something to learn because you have to learn how to work with pitchers and stuff like that, every other position on the field, you are your best fielder the day you step on as a rookie, and you only get worse from there. People don't improve in the field. They're at their best when they're 22, 23, and they gradually get worse. Maybe they stay the same if they're a freak, but players do not just suddenly get better in the field. It's not like you have a learning curve. You either can play the position or you can't. There's a reason why players come up as shortstops and end up playing somewhere else because they look at them when they get to Double-A and they say, nah, you're not a major league shortstop. You got to go play third base.
Ryan Mountcastle, for example, can't find a place on the field anywhere.
Michael Givens.
He was drafted as a shortstop. Michael Givens. Oh, jeez.
Jonathan Scope. Adam Jones. All of these guys were shortstops, and they said, you can't play shortstop. You're not good at it. You got to go play another position.
Well, so one thing to keep in mind is that Glaber's first year with the Yankees on the Major League roster, he played almost exclusively at second base. He played 104. He started 104 games at second base and 15 games at shortstop. So shortstop is not really his natural position. But then was. Not really. He started as a second baseman, and that's where he got all of his reps, most of his reps as a rookie. It wasn't until his second year that he basically split almost 50-50 the two positions. And then between last year and this year, every start he's made has been at shortstop. So shortstop is one of the toughest defensive positions. It's certainly the toughest infield position to play. And so for that to not be where your major league reps have come from, you can sort of understand some difficulties there. His fielding percentage as a rookie at second base was not awful. It was .970. Not great, but you can live with that, especially for a rookie. His fielding percentage in the 15 games he started at shortstop was .928. That's terrible. But you give him a little bit of a pass because not only is that not really his natural position, but he's not playing there frequently enough to get a lot of reps there. His second year where he split 50-50, his fielding percentages were nearly identical in the two spots with a very slight favoritism towards second base, but he was below .970 in both. And then he was .933 last year at shortstop. He's actually better this year at shortstop than he was last year, but you can't accept it anymore. You just can't accept it anymore, and so I don't know that I agree that fans should have been more critical of his defense to begin with, in particular at shortstop, because while I agree you tend to get worse over time, if you're playing a new position, like when you switch positions as a fielder, you start bad, you typically get better, and then you kind of hit that same very slow, or in some cases rapid, regression over time.
Yeah, but
I thought he was a shortstop in the minors, though, when he got traded to the Yankees organization from the Cubs.
He may have been. I honestly don't know for sure about his minor league fielding, but when he came to the majors, we did not use him. We used him very sparingly at shortstop. Right. We had Didi at shortstop.
Field the ball.
Right. We had Didi at shortstop, and he was actually good defensive shortstop for us.
Yeah.
And there is a difference when you're, yes, when you're playing shortstop every day for most of your life, if that was the case for him, you would think that it would still translate when he plays that position at the majors, but it's a different game speed.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you, but I am going to point out that if you looked at more advanced metrics regarding Gleyber Torres and his fielding at second base, he wasn't very good over there either.
He was not very.
In fact, he was terrible.
He struggled. He had 12 errors in that rookie season at second base specifically, plus another 5 at shortstop. So he definitely had a rough rookie season defensively. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. Like I still feel like game speed potentially plays a little bit into that, but then he never got better. He's only gotten worse, and noticeably so.
Yeah, I just think that he's not a good infielder, and I think that's something that should have been taken into consideration when he was developing in the minors. That this guy is not a major league infielder. Like
Absolutely.
He can play the outfield probably. You could easily convert him to play corner outfield, but if he does that, he better hit. Like if you're going to be taking a left field spot, you better be able to hit the baseball,
especially with the outfielders that we have.
Granted,
Stanton can leave. We have no use for him. He's not doing anything for us.
So the Yankees have sort of, I don't want to say put themselves in this position, but they've put so much outfield depth on the field, especially with the Stanton trade. I remember at the time I even thought, I realize Stanton's really good, and of course he hasn't been with the Yankees, especially this year. But
even if he had lived up to the hype, like we already have outfielders. Why do we need more?
Like eventually, there's a point where you do have too much of a good thing.
Yeah, we're oversaturated.
And then so when you've got players like Gleyber Torres, who is clearly not a terrific defender and not really capable of defending at a decent level at the major leagues, playing middle infield, you have nowhere to put him because you would like to have his bat in the lineup, and perhaps you could hope to convert him to playing outfield potentially. I mean, it happens all the time, but you got nowhere to put him now. So he's got to play middle infield, which means he's going to continue to struggle out there.
Yeah. Yep.
So we'll move on to some. I'm sorry, Evan.
Before we move on, where's Miguel Andujar? What happened to him?
No idea. No idea what's going on with Andujar.
I was at the game when he hit his first major league home run, and everybody's all excited and stuff, and now Miguel Andujar.
Yeah, I mean you can look that up, but I honestly don't know where Andujar is. I know he's not on our major league roster as of right now. I'm not even sure that he's on our 40-man roster, so maybe he's injured. I have no idea. Actually, no. He is still on our 40-man roster.
Looks like he's dealing with soreness in his right hand and wrist.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
He doesn't move the needle for me either, though. I mean, he doesn't move the needle for me either.
Like Chris Davis had the sore palm a few years ago.
Wonder what he was doing to have that happen. Yeah. We'll move on to some actually good baseball teams at the moment. Yeah, the Padres and the Dodgers squared off in an awesome series over the weekend. That was must-see television, even though it's, like I said earlier, it was mid-April, and yet I watched all 3 games, and I did not leave the room because they games lived up to the hype. They were tremendous.
They were so much fun to watch. Just, I mean, the pitching matchups, the hitters, I mean, Mookie Betts, that catch that he made to save was that the second game of the series? I think it was.
Yep.
Just, I mean, it was so much fun. Just couldn't take your eyes off of it. Didn't want to take your eyes off of it for all the right reasons.
Yeah, it was a high level of baseball. A lot of really good players. The games were all very competitive. And you had some sparks fly in game one. I forget what caused the
catcher's interference.
Fight. Yeah, it was a catcher's interference. Oh. No, yeah, that was the second game. What happened in the first game? I don't remember.
There was something weird. I think somebody got hit, and there was some eyeballing going on, and the pitcher started jawing at the hitter that he just drilled, and it was like an extra innings. It was pretty. Nothing really happened, but. The Padres announcers seemingly wanted something to happen.
Oh, right, yeah, because one of the Padres announcers like, we're going to get a fight.
He said, now we've got a fight. It's like,
he was so really, excited.
Dude. This is just a shouting match. This isn't an actual fight. But that was definitely entertaining. Then you had the catcher's interference incident where Profar took a really goofy swing and seemingly was trying to hit the ball out of the catcher's mitt when he had already caught it, which, I understand that the rule says that that's catcher's interference, but man, I would be furious if I was Kershaw. And yeah, the catcher did kind of maybe reach his glove forward a little bit.
He reached pretty far forward.
But
also,
the hitter
catcher, that hurts.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, I've had my hand hit catching, and that was by a 10-year-old. That was not fun. When I was in Little League, because they didn't care that I was left-handed, it was stupid. It didn't make any sense. Like, how am I supposed to throw people out of third base as a lefty?
You have to spin around and do it.
I know. I did.
Spinning adds velocity to your throw.
That's not.
You got to loosen your arm.
Oh, I loosened my arm up all right. But I watched it and I was like, wow. I've never seen a major leaguer take a swing like that. That reminds me of like if I did that in Little League, they would have kicked my ass off the field. Like swinging backwards. I mean, come on. That was a ridiculous. And I won't quote Kershaw because it's not appropriate for our podcast, but he was right. That was a BS swing. I mean, come on. But hey, he got the base, and I don't think Profar did anything intentional because I'm going to give major leaguers the benefit of the doubt that they're not being cheap like that. I think he was just so caught off guard and late that he tried to slap at a ball that was already by him. Yeah. But it looked so stupid. And, and so again, even the umpire told Kershaw, it's like, yeah, it's BS, but we have to give him first. That's the rule. Because it was silly. I mean, it was just such a silly play. But again, sparks flew over it, which I'm not going to complain about that. And have a little heated rivalry somewhere other than Red Sox Yankees, because I think even Cory might be a little tired of that one, just the constant.
Well, it's not heated anymore. It's hardly the last decade or so. It's hardly been two really good teams playing each other. It's always been one of them being really good and the other one being mediocre. Or terrible sometimes in the Red Sox case.
Yeah, they met up in the playoffs back in 2018. And the Yankees were good that year, no doubt, but the Red Sox were on a mission that year.
The Red Sox were incredible that season.
Yeah, which, again, I don't understand how they were that good and just have surrounded that team years-wise by nothing special. Like, what happened?
Well, because they wanted financial flexibility. That's what happened.
Right. They let Mookie Betts leave. They traded him for Verdugo, who some Dodgers fan on Reddit was just like, I really liked him. I wasn't sure about this trade. I'm like, you got Mookie Betts, man. Are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Well, apparently the Red Sox owner is John Henry, who also owns Liverpool. So he was trying to get some money out of the European Super League. So I guess, need a little extra cash.
Well, the European Super League is not happening. So.
Oh well, the poor guy. How is he going to feed his family on the multiple billions of dollars?
Yeah, John Henry's always been a little sleazy to me. I mean, he runs the Boston Globe, I believe. I think that's his newspaper that he owns. And so like, he would be the guy responsible for every time a Red Sox manager got fired or a player left, that they would basically smear him on his way out of town. They did the same thing with Terry Francona, where they'd write nasty stuff about him being addicted to pain pills or something like that, and basically losing control of the team because he was a junkie. I'm like, wow.
The chicken and beer thing?
Yeah, I was like, wow, that is some cold stuff. And they also were thrilled to write every nasty article they could about the New England Patriots because the Patriots were chewing up their market share because Boston people couldn't have cared less about the Patriots until about 1995. And now the Patriots are a huge brand up there because they've won 6 Super Bowls. And so every single time they had a chance to write something negative about New England, despite the fact that they were winning all the championships, they did. It was pretty spectacular.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, the Patriots were irrelevant. Their stadium was a dump. They almost moved to Hartford, didn't they? Almost moved to Tennessee, too.
Yeah, there was a threat to move the team to St. Louis, I think, early.
St. Louis?
Yeah, like before the Rams moved there from Los Angeles, that was the consideration until Bob Kraft bought the team and built the stadium in Foxborough. And that's how we ended up where we are. But anyway, that's a nice history lesson regarding New England Patriots. Back to the Dodgers and the Padres. How about your boy Manny Machado hustling his way to tying the game up
on a bad leg or something?
It was a tweaked back, but yeah. So Manny gets hurt swinging the bat, like he tweaks a back or something like that. He's clearly uncomfortable at the plate.
One of his backs, I guess.
One of his 2 backs. So he tweaks his back, and he somehow managed to work a walk in the at bat, even though he was smarting the entire time. And then he steals second, which, again, to my pleasant surprise, Manny Machado has turned into Ricky Henderson.
He really has. He's stealing him left and right.
He stole 4 bases this week for my fantasy team and didn't get caught a single time. It was glorious. And then he takes third on a wild pitch that was not exactly a super easy pitch to take off on. I mean, it was in the dirt, but the catcher kept it in front of him.
Yeah.
But he took off on right away, and he got there pretty easily. And then he scored on a single. I was like, look at Manny Machado hustling. And the thing is, when Manny was an Oriole, yeah, he didn't always leg out routine ground balls, and sometimes he got caught watching what he thought was going to be a home run, and the ball would hit off the top of the wall, and he'd end up stuck at first base because
Steve Pearce did that in a playoff game and got thrown out.
Yes, I recall. That was not great either. But he also had moments where, I don't know if you remember, Evan, where Manny took all of the bases on a little league situation where
yes,
the
up in Toronto, because they were shifted over and somebody grounded out, and they forgot to cover third, and then in their haste to try to cover up for not covering third, they forgot to cover home plate, and Manny comes all the way around.
Yes, it was a very impressive display of hustle, and I'm just like, Manny's got this reputation mostly because of his own dumbass words, where he decided that he was going to tell the world, I'm not exactly Johnny Hustle. That's not my cup of tea during the playoffs when he's in a contract year. But he has shown that he can go all out and turn it on at times like that.
Hold on. Can you hear me? I lost your guys' audio. Give me 1 second. I'm not sure. That seems like the same thing that happened last week. I'm going to try closing Skype and come back in. Sorry about this, folks. Give me 1 moment. We're going to get Eric and Evan right back.
We were in the nosebleeds up in section 400, but we was right by center court because the tickets for the lower bowl were going for like $450, and I'm like, no, I'm not paying that much to go to a game.
A Wizards game.
Yeah, I mean, I realize the Warriors are there and Steph Curry is box office, but I'm not going to spend that much money to sit there. And the thing is, by the time I logged back in, because I saw the tickets at night, and I wanted to ask my dad if he wanted to go. So I waited till the morning to actually buy them, and the lower bowl tickets were all gone by the time I, had gotten on the computer that morning anyway. So, yeah, we went to the game. It was exciting. It was nice to be back in the crowd. It was a limited crowd, of course, but the fact that the Wizards won was nice because the crowd got into it. And it's like, again, I said one of two things are going to happen here: either the crowd's going to get into it because Steph Curry's lighting the Wizards up, or they're going to get into it because the Wizards are competing and possibly winning. So,
how did you guys get back to basketball in 12 seconds that I was gone?
I asked him about it.
He asked me about the game because I went.
All right, well, we are still live.
Oh, well, okay. Did they just hear everything that we were talking about?
Yes.
Oh, okay, but I thought you left. Anyway.
I came back in.
Whatever. So anyway, back to Dodgers Padres and how Manny Machado is hustling all the time now because that's what he does when he wants to. Don't be a hater. But that was cool. I think that having Trevor Bauer involved in this rivalry can only make it more spicy because Trevor Bauer is an incendiary figure in Major League Baseball. He's very much a polarizing guy. I love Trevor Bauer. I think he's great. But I also get why he could piss a lot of people off because he definitely has his share of antics, like in the preseason or in spring training when he's pitching with one eye closed and letting everybody know I'm doing this with one eye closed. And I'm like,
throws the ball over center field when he's getting taken out of a game.
Yep, and then promptly gets fired. That was fun.
Then he wins the Cy Young Award
with somebody else, yes. And then he goes to the Dodgers and signs this crazy deal where he's on a 2-year deal for like $80 million or something absurd like that so that he can re-dip again in 2 years. He hires this 28-year-old woman as his agent that nobody'd ever heard of, and she gets him this revolutionary contract. It's like Trevor Bauer's out there doing wild stuff, and I'm here for all of it.
Oh, yeah. The baseball needs more people like Trevor Bauer. Just, add some spice, like you said, some sizzle, some craziness, some interesting stuff. Like, we need more just weird, kooky people.
Yeah, he's a must-listen whenever he's on Pardon My Take as a guest. It was like, oh, they got Trevor Bauer today. That's great because he's a regular appearer on the show. He's a smart dude. Like, he's definitely not a dummy. He's a little out there, as we've discussed, but there's nothing wrong with that. Reggie Jackson was a little out there, and he was awesome. So,
I don't like Reggie Jackson. I can't stand Reggie Jackson.
Fair enough. He was still an exciting player. I think he was still good for ball.
Yeah,
he's good for ball. You don't have to love everybody that's good for ball.
Yeah, apparently he screwed over the Orioles back in the '80s, and he just loves the Yankees. He just slurps the Yankees all the time. It's like he never even played for another team. He only played for the Yankees.
He was better with the A's anyway.
Yeah. All-time leader in strikeouts, by the way. Reggie Jackson as a hitter. Chris Davis was on track to pass him, but Chris Davis doesn't get at bats anymore.
That's usually what happens to people that strike out as much as Chris Davis. They stop being allowed to hit.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to a little bit of information about our fantasy league. Cory and I got off to 1-0 starts because Cory beat Evan head-to-head. I know I was the highest scorer. I think Cory might have been the second leading scorer.
Third.
Third.
The other Cory was the second.
Gotcha. So, and I think Cory's off to a great start this week. I believe you're leading the league this week.
Yeah, I got off to a super hot start last week. Was like blowing everybody out in scoring, and then it closed up, and like Evan pulled within 10 points of me by the end. This week,
you also had your starters go early in the week.
Yeah,
too.
but like I've already used 4 out of 7 starts for this week. But my hitters are doing really well this week, so I've been kind of keeping that gap so far.
Yep. So we'll keep you updated on our shenanigans with the fantasy baseball because we are pretty new at this. At least Cory and I are. I don't know if Evan does this regularly, but
we played fantasy baseball for the first time last season.
Okay, so we're all pretty new at this. It's not nearly the same as fantasy football that we've been doing for a decade. So it'll be an interesting experience to see how that goes for the rest of the year. So we'll finish up our baseball talk. ESPN wrote a story on women in Major League Baseball and some of the trials and tribulations that they go through. I haven't actually had an opportunity to read this article yet. I imagine Cory has, so I'll let Cory talk about what you saw in there.
The sad thing is that none of it is really all that surprising. But the interesting thing about the article, and I'm not going to sit here and try and summarize everything because there was so much to it. I would encourage anybody who's listening to go and find the article. Is written by June Lee on ESPN, basically talking about how Kim Ng's hiring does not mean that everything is fixed. Major League Baseball still has a long way to go, not just in terms of hiring women to executive positions, but also just in terms of providing an inclusive environment for women. But as I was reading it, it just brought me back to, we did a part 2 episode just before football season began to talk about the Washington Post article about the Washington football team and the culture within that organization involving women who were hired by the organization. It just brought that back to mind for me. And, it's fascinating because that was one team, and like every story in there was just awful. And you're sitting there like, I can't believe that happened. I can't believe this happened. And then I guess I have to believe that this happened, because it's none of it is shocking. And it's really sad that it's not. But then you see something like this, and like this is pervasive throughout the sport. It's, this is behavior by leadership, by managers, executives, and even the players within the organization. Like that's one thing we didn't really see with the Washington football team and stuff was, any sort of issues with the players treating women that way. But some of that might have been because the organization kind of kept women out of the way of the players, which is a whole other issue in and of itself. But like there was one woman in the story, just one example I'll throw out there, who was taking a training course, and in order to do it, she had to be on the computer that was inside the locker room. It apparently was the only computer where they could take the training on, and they decided to replace her with a male counterpart to do the training because one of the managers was uncomfortable having a woman in the locker room. This was a woman who packed up and moved across the country to take this job because they wanted her with the organization, and then they went and pulled this with her. And it just, and just kind of like thinking back to football, if this is so pervasive within Major League Baseball, which typically you do not think of as exhibiting the level of toxic masculinity that you expect to see in football almost, just imagine what this is like across the NFL. It all is such a huge issue, and it really is frustrating that there are so many people who, they read something like this and they'll say, well, good, women shouldn't be there anyway. That's unacceptable.
Yeah, it is a shame how unsurprising it was to hear some of these things happen. And some of it's just ridiculous too. Like you don't have to be super smart to know that you can't treat women or anybody like this. I'm not surprised, and yet I don't understand how like just why though? Like why? If the manager's uncomfortable with women in the locker room, he's going to have to get comfortable with it. That's I really, why is that even a problem? I do get the sense though that baseball is really the opposite of progressive. Like they just don't change with the times unless they're forced to. Just can be kind of sluggish on stuff. And like the mistreatment of women, this isn't just a sports issue or a baseball issue or a football issue. Like this type of stuff happens in every industry. And that's really unfortunate, and that needs to change. You should just treat people with some respect, why don't you? That's all you have to do. Like why is this so hard for everybody?
Yeah, Cory mentioned the issue of masculinity and stuff, and how you would figure that things would be different in baseball, or that certainly would not be worse in baseball than it is in football or other sports. But we also know that baseball is the anti-progress. This is the sport that's up its own ass when it comes to traditions and its history. And so part of their history has been sexism, misogyny, and racism. So this is stuff that we fully expect Major League Baseball to lean into more of, especially the stuff they can get away with, which is seemingly sexism, at least until hopefully now and in the future, which is why it's so important for these stories to be told. Because while I see this, and I'm disappointed and discouraged when I see it, I'm glad it's getting out there, because like you guys said, it's obvious to us because we don't have our heads up our asses. But a lot of people ignore this or pretend it doesn't happen, or are shocked to find out. Well, stop being shocked, because these stories are becoming more and more prevalent, and therefore it's time to do something about it.
How many times can you be shocked over and over?
Right.
How many times can you be surprised by the same thing that keeps happening? It shouldn't surprise you. Just do something about it. And maybe once you do something about it, then it would shock you that it happened again.
Yep. So before we get out of here with baseball stuff, Cory has an extra innings report because I guess Evan has decided he's not doing that anymore.
Yeah, apparently I've got to take over this. And this probably won't, I'm not going to commit to this being a regular thing on the show, but
I didn't know. I was committed to it being a regular thing.
You were supposed to be, but no. Anyway, I've been watching so much baseball over the past week, or really 2 weeks. I don't know what's flipped in my head because
fantasy baseball has flipped.
I think it's got to be that. Just like the fact that I'm playing fantasy baseball again for the first time in a long time. I'm actually doing all the stat keeping and things like that I do for fantasy football that I really enjoy. It's kind of got me watching more of it. So the past couple of days, we have had some really fascinating extra innings games. So yesterday, we already kind of talked about the A's. The reason that their winning streak is still alive is because of a buku wild extra innings game yesterday against the Twins, in which Lou Trevino, who had pitched 2/3 of an inning to get a save on Tuesday, pitched yesterday. Got through the 9th inning cleanly, pitched a great 9th inning, and then was asked to come back out in the 10th, and after getting a strikeout, gave up a 2-run home run to left center field that put the Twins out in front by 2 runs, 12-10 in the 10th. And then the bottom of the 10th happened, and everything flew off the handles for the Twins. That it all culminated in back-to-back fielding errors that gave the A's the win. First, the second baseman failed to scoop up a ground ball that if he had gotten to first, that would have been the game. They would have won by 2 runs. Instead, 1 run came in, made it a 1-run game, and then the very next batter, let me remind myself who it was. I believe it was Laureano. Yeah, Ramon Laureano. He hit it to third base, and Luis Arias, who had already had some trouble getting the ball out of his glove early in the game, just completely whiffed on a throw to first base. It wasn't close. It was not even close, and it brought in 2 runs, and the A's ended up walking off on back-to-back errors. Then, fast forward to today, and you've got the game between the Diamondbacks and the Reds, where the Diamondbacks in the top of the 10th scored 6 runs. They batted around all the way through the lineup, and it just, I don't know what happened with the Reds pitching, but it was absolutely pathetic. And in fact, it ended up Asdrubal Cabrera struck out to end the 10th the same way he did to end the 9th. Like the guy who started out the 10th inning on second base because he made the last out in the 9th ended up being the last out of the 10th inning. And then in the bottom of the 10th, the Reds actually kind of made a run for it. They scored 3 runs in the bottom to make it a 14-11 ball game. Actually got the tying run up to the plate and just couldn't quite pull it through. Joey Votto couldn't pull it out. He'd already hit a home run early in the game. But just a couple of wild extra innings games in the past couple of days. It's been fun to watch.
Yeah, that game with the Reds sounds like it reminds me of a Mariners game from years and years ago where they're playing the White Sox. And it was 0-0 going into the 13th inning. And the White Sox scored 5 runs in the top of the 13th. And then the Mariners scored 5 runs in the bottom of the 13th. And I was like, okay, you could have scored any one of these runs in one of the 12 innings before this, and you guys would have won. You score 5 in this inning, and they ended up losing like 6-5 because they gave up another run in the 14th and didn't score in the 14th. I'm like, it's just unbelievable how there's a reason why I don't really care about them anymore. My goodness.
I mean, the no playoffs for 20 years is starting to get to you.
Oh, it went and got to me already. It especially helped when you find out that you've got fans of the local team that are a lot more amenable to you being from the Washington, Baltimore area than Mariners fans who hated on me on the internet because I wasn't from Seattle. I'm like, well, screw you. Like, you know, I'm a dedicated fan. I'm rooting for your sorry ass franchise from 3,000 miles away. Why are you hating?
And staying up all night long while they play in the middle of the night?
Yeah. Yeah, I was dedicated, man. I put my time in. I didn't get any return on my investment, so it's time to sell that stock. I should have sold it 10 years ago.
If anybody out here wants to be an Orioles fan, welcome. Okay, welcome. We have plenty of orange shirts and stuff. You know, I'll teach you all the silliness and whatever. You know, anybody who wants to root for the Orioles is welcome.
Orioles Twitter is also a wonderful place, so keep that in mind.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about some other things before we get to the NFL, other things being the International Olympic Committee. I believe that's what IOC stands for.
Yes, sir.
They have banned Black Lives Matter and similar slogans at the Olympics coming up this year in Tokyo this summer. But they allow for words like peace, respect, solidarity, inclusion, and equality. So basically all of the milquetoast words that the NBA allowed when they were in the bubble, with the exception of the fact that the NBA actually allowed Black Lives Matter to exist on the court and on the player's jersey. That was the extent of it for the NBA. So, you know, this news doesn't surprise me. Obviously, I think it's disappointing. I think that players should have the opportunity to be activists, especially in light of all the things that are going on with regards to racial injustice. But again, this isn't something that blows my mind with surprise.
Yeah, no, it definitely doesn't, you know, blow my mind or anything like that. But you know, I appreciate that some activist groups around the world, including one or two in particular from Germany and Ireland, who have pledged some legal backing to athletes who decide to protest or demonstrate anyway. You know, I found that very encouraging, that there at least is, you know, some pushback on things like this. You know, because the whole thing here is, you know, you look back, you know, at the Olympics with Tommy Smith and John Carlos raising their fists. You know, after, I forget which track event that was that they had been in. I should remember, considering I'm a cross-country track coach. But, you know, a demonstration even like that, just something as simple as putting your fists in the air or kneeling while your national anthem is playing, could result in being sent home under this decision. And the thing that
was in 1968.
Yeah.
Right? Have we not made any progress since 1968 on this type of stuff?
People want to claim that we have, but, you know, decisions like this would certainly suggest that that we have not in, you know, in a lot of ways. So it just
3 years.
You know, it's frustrating. It's not surprising. I'm encouraged by some of the response around the world to it. But the other thing that really annoys me about this, you know, a few months back, we had an episode that we titled, in fact, it was, you know, last summer, I think, where we had an episode titled "Politics Don't Belong in Sports," with the, you know, SpongeBob meme font where you're going back and forth between the caps and you know, and no caps characters. And this just feels like a part two to that, because you know, this issue shouldn't be political, but is for some reason. That being the decision that athletes might make to demonstrate and act as activists for some of these issues. But it is a political decision that the IOC is making to ban something like this. Like, that's the thing that frustrates me in all this. Earlier this week, I believe it was actually Tuesday morning. No, it was last Friday. I woke up and I saw an article in Pro Football Talk where Mike Florio wrote an article just lighting into Brett Favre over some comments that he's made recently about politics needing to stay out of sports and all that. And
meanwhile, Brett Favre, the athlete, is talking about politics.
Well, there's that. There's Brett Favre, the former athlete, talking about politics. But there's also the fact that, you know, the decision to do these things or to not do them they're both equally political. The decision to have the national anthem played before a sporting event or to have a flyover by fighter jets from our military, those are political decisions. The decision to not allow athletes to promote phrases like Black Lives Matter, and let's be clear here, it doesn't matter what you think of the organization Black Lives Matter. It really doesn't matter whether you think that they're a good organization, whether there's problems with them as an organization. The phrase itself should not be controversial. And the decision to ban that is a political decision. It's them being worried that they're going to lose sponsorship so that people are not going to tune in because it's too political. But you're making that decision to appease a certain political demographic. Like, that's what that decision is. So don't give me this politics need to stay out of sports. That's politics. The decision to take those statements out of sports is political.
Well, I mean, it's the Olympic, the IOC really needs to get off their high horse on this one. Talking about how politics don't belong in sports. Like, the Olympics is inherently political. That's what the whole thing is. It's a political exercise. It's been that way since 1896. I mean, let's be real. So, like, back in the 80s, right, the United States sat out of the Summer Olympics because it was in Moscow. So then in 1984, when the Olympics was in Los Angeles, the Soviet Union sat out. So, like, the United States just dominated and won everything and stuff. So, you know, and they have all the national anthems and the flags and the processionals and all this kind of stuff. Like, and, you know, the leaders and heads of state show up. Remember at when Pence showed up in South Korea for one of the something or other? You know, like, it's the whole thing is political. That's what we're doing. So don't give me this crap. Oh, we need politics out of it. No, it is politics, right? It's been politics the whole time. You know, just sort of dressed up, with people running around and swimming and jumping over stuff. And I've been saying this for a long time. It's not a political opinion to say racism is wrong. If you don't think racism is wrong, then that's a you problem. And you should probably, do some soul searching and address that. But to say that Black Lives Matter is a political statement, I didn't know that Black Lives Matter was running for office. So, what are you even talking about? I'm sorry, white people, that saying Black Lives Matter makes you uncomfortable, but you're gonna have to get used to that. So, I'm. Oh, this is exhausting. It really is.
Yeah, it's insane to me when they talk about Tommy Smith and John Carlos as if that's not one of the defining moments of Olympics history. Like, that is one of the best things that ever happened at the Olympics. And it is universally celebrated as a positive. It's right up there with the Miracle on Ice. It's considered one of the iconic defining moments of what the Olympics are all about. And they got hate at the time. They got death threats. They got booed. But we were supposed to move on from that because we look back at that and we say, it was pretty damn brave what those men did. Mm-hmm. Putting on those black gloves and raising their fists while they were on the podium. And it resonated with a lot of people, and it still does today. And the IOC saying, we're just simply not going to allow people to do that, especially in these times. We're hustling backwards here. It doesn't make any sense. So we'll move on to the NFL. Football news. We've got some information coming about Trevor Lawrence, where apparently he said that he's internally motivated and he's not a guy that's got a chip on his shoulder and he can walk away from the game at any point and be happy. And of course, football guys freaked out about this.
Rabble.
Yes, they lost their minds because this young man who has been the best at this sport pretty much since he was a freshman in high school came out and said, yeah, I don't go out there and psych myself up like Michael Jordan or Tom Brady and, convince myself that the world is against me and all this crap, because it's simply not true. Everybody has been coronating Trevor Lawrence as the next big thing in the NFL since he was a freshman in college at Clemson. He's been that guy. And so when you're in a position where you've been, I don't want to say silver spoon situation because he certainly earned his clout as being a great player, but he's never been in a situation where he's had people really doubt him. So why would he have that chip on his shoulder? It's the same way that I would feel about Peyton Manning when he came out of college. Peyton Manning has been celebrated as a great quarterback pretty much since he was born. It was almost his birthright because of who his dad was. If he came to the league acting like, oh, nobody thinks I'm any good, I'd be like, yeah, you're faking it, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds ridiculous. Like, I mean, thank you, Trevor Lawrence, for looking in the mirror. Like, yeah, you're pretty good at this. What do you need a chip on your shoulder for? You've been better than everybody else your entire life.
Well, and whether he's been better than everybody else isn't even the point, because a chip on your shoulder is about people doubting you. And Trevor Lawrence has been coordinated as the #1 draft pick whenever he eventually declared for the NFL draft since he stepped on the field as a freshman.
Yes.
In fact, it was really even before his freshman year. He hadn't even played a college game, and he was already expected to be the #1 draft whenever he went into the draft.
When he was 18.
If he was sitting there saying, oh, man, yeah, I got this huge chip on my shoulder, I got all this to prove, I'd be like, okay, dude, come on. Like, stop trying to create a storyline here. Like, I get annoyed enough when Tom Brady still tries to, like, say anything that even comes close to suggesting he has a chip on his shoulder, but at least he can still point back to he was the 199th overall draft pick.
Did he even start at Michigan?
Yeah, he did.
Oh.
Eventually.
Yeah, he not right away, but he did his final year. I don't remember if he started more than 1 year, though. I don't remember that.
He was good at Michigan. He won a bowl game. He lit up Alabama in the Orange Bowl. He was a good college quarterback. And the thing with Tom Brady is I think a lot of people misinterpret his motivations currently as him having a chip on his shoulder. It's like, no, the dude just likes playing football.
Yes.
Like, sometimes that's good enough.
Fun.
Like, Tom Brady's chip on his shoulder hasn't been there probably since Deflategate, when we manufactured a chip to put on his shoulder with a ridiculous story. But ever since he's won that Super Bowl, it's pretty much, yeah, he's the GOAT. He's just playing because he likes it. I'll never forget when people were asking him right before Super Bowl 51, they asked him, what motivates you? Are you shooting for this, that, or the other? What are your goals? And he says, I just like being here with this team. It's about this current team to me. Like, I like being a part of the locker room situation with the guys, and it's just something that I don't want to give up because I really enjoy doing this.
Well, yeah.
It's not like he's got to prove something to everybody every moment of his life.
Well, maybe not, but I do think that he did kind of play with a bit of a chip on his shoulder. I think that he suggested that a little bit with some of the things that he said leading into this season, but even that was understandable because he's switching teams, and there are people out there who say, he's a system quarterback and he really was successful more so because of Belichick than because of himself. And so even then,
wizard.
I can give the greatest quarterback of all time a pass for talking about having a chip on his shoulder because I can see it. It's not there for Trevor Lawrence, and for him to try and suggest that there would just be completely, unattached from reality.
Yeah, like everything that happened with Tom Brady to make him motivated in that regard with a chip on the shoulder has been justified to some extent because of where he was picked, because ever since he started winning, people questioned whether he was any good. And then when he got good, people said, are you actually good, or are you just a product of Bill Belichick? This, that, the other. And, of course, the internet exists, so these stupid ideas get put out there as if they're worth listening to, but they do exist. And so people do raise those questions on television because that's what idiots want to see when they watch First Take or whatever. But it's still there. It still means something. When you see your name being talked about and you see somebody saying, I don't think that guy's actually that good. Well, that's motivation. Even if you think the guy's an idiot, you still want to prove him wrong. So there is something to be said for that. But like you said, Trevor Lawrence, nobody's had a bad thing to say about this guy ever, and rightfully so. He's a great player. The only bad thing I'll say about him is cut your hair, dude. I hate your hair.
I'm not a fan of the hair either, and I will say there is one quarterback in this draft who I think could wind up being a better player. It's not to say that I would take this guy over Trevor Lawrence, but I'll be talking about it next week, I'm sure, during the first round. It is not Mac Jones.
I would seriously hope you're not going to say Mac Jones. But
it is not Mac Jones.
I was going to say, if you say Mac Jones, I'm like, Eric, we need to have a talk about whether or not Cory should still be on this show anymore.
Yeah, we need an intervention before we. Yeah, but the point is, I think, Cory, even though you might think that somebody has potential upside higher, Trevor Lawrence is by far and away the surest bet coming into this season.
Yeah.
This draft. He's a no-brainer number one pick because you've got to assume his floor at the very least is going to be pretty high.
Yes, I agree with that. He does have the highest floor out of any of the quarterbacks coming to this draft.
One thing I want to mention about this issue is that these coaches get all worked up about how he doesn't have a chip on his shoulder and how he could quit football at any time or has other interests. Like, how stupid can you be, right? What's wrong with having a guy who's intelligent on your team? This is the same beef they had with my boy Josh Rosen.
Good boy.
Yeah. He hasn't proven himself yet, but we'll see. Once he makes a team somewhere. But like, why is this an issue that the guy has other interests or that he's intelligent? Like Andrew Luck was an architectural engineering major at Stanford or something like that.
Very smart dude.
Yeah. Like what? Why is that a problem? You need a bunch of idiot robot people to be on your football team.
Maybe because
you're worried they're going to question you.
That might be the issue right there. If we're trying to compare him to Andrew Luck, is that maybe they're worried that if they don't put a good offensive line in front of him, he'll retire early.
Well, that's with everybody. You better put a line in front of him.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Kansas City Chiefs.
That's what happens.
No, but that's not what executives want to do. They want to just not put anybody around you and still expect you to be loyal to their team.
Well, he's loyal. Andrew Luck was playing with a lacerated kidney. Okay, that's an
but then he retired. So screw Andrew Luck.
Shaking around so violently. So, it's loyalty, right?
Goodness.
Yeah.
The Yankees have actually tied it up 3-3. I'm amazed.
Oh my God. So we got some NFL rule changes. Speaking of Tom Brady, he had a take on this first one we're going to discuss. The NFL has opened up numbers for various players at different positions to have access to, so they've loosened the rules on what players can wear what numbers based off of what position they hold.
They've loosened them very much. Like the only things I really noticed that weren't allowed were offensive and defensive linemen can't wear the single digit numbers, but every other position group can.
Imagine Terrence Cody wearing number 1, right?
My God.
That would look ridiculous. No, you need to wear 99, please.
I absolutely hate it when I watch college football games and they've got situations like that where I've got my free safety wearing number 2. I'm like, what is that? And then I've got a guy on the offense and the defense have the same number.
Well, yeah, but that's going to happen when you have more than 100 people on your roster with some of these schools.
Yeah, I get it, but still, it's like I don't want to see something like that in the NFL. I thought about this. At first I thought, who cares? Then I thought, when I actually see this, it's going to bother me.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I think receivers should wear numbers in the 80s. Offensive linemen should wear numbers in the 70s. Defensive linemen in the 60s. Quarterbacks, single digits, and up to 19. Running backs, 20s, and so on. Linebackers in the 50s. Just keep it simple. What are we doing out here?
Yeah,
I think this is absurd. So one thing that was kind of funny was that Patrick Queen tweeted, he was kind of interested in getting his number back that he had at LSU. But Patrick Queen wore number 8 at LSU, and on the Ravens, number 8 is kind of taken.
Yeah,
so
by a pretty decent player. I mean, some people might have heard of him. He's won a regular season award before.
Yeah.
Like I said,
not a major one, just the MVP.
Yeah, just unanimous MVP of the league. Only ever been done by Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. So, other than that.
Speaking of Tommy Four Names, Tom Brady was not happy about this either. He
tried to claim that it's going to be an injury risk.
He claimed that there's also concern, according to Tom, that it's harder to manage situations like identifying position groups on the field because I guess they normally do so by number. Which
wait a minute. No,
I'm sorry, but as a quarterback, as a team, when you're looking at film, you should know what number the other players are wearing, and you should not be confused. I will be confused at first, especially for players who change their number. Honestly, that's the only part that's going to potentially bother me is the players that change their number radically from where they were to what they're going to be. That's going to throw me for a loop for a little while, but I'll eventually get used to it. I really don't think that this is going to be that big of an issue. But as a quarterback, trying to complain that you're not going to know, which guy is the middle linebacker and that your offensive linemen are going to be confused on their blocking assignments, if you can't figure that out regardless of players' numbers, you don't belong in the NFL.
Also, this is a lot of talk from Tom Brady, who was the quarterback on the play that in the playoffs that got John Harbaugh bent out of shape when they ran a trick play trying to confuse the Ravens defense as to who was eligible and who wasn't. But now Tom Brady is going to be like, well, we would get confused because, if we change the numbers out there, then we don't know who's the linebacker.
Such a load of barnacles.
Yes, a big load of barnacles. Oh, my God.
Well, and it's surprising because Tom Brady is very much a company man when it comes to the NFL. And so you don't typically see him be that outspoken on social media over a rule change. Like, normally he'd just be like, whatever, I don't care. I'm Tom Brady. I'm the GOAT. But this one, he was fired up.
On a boat and throw the trophy across to another boat.
Yes, and that was awesome.
Well, he wished he hadn't done that. He did say later, I wish I hadn't done that.
Well, I'm glad he did.
He's got so many of them, he can just grab another one if it falls in the water.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but the Bucks don't have many others. They have one other one.
Yeah, well, they have the one other one.
They'll still get rings. Yeah. It's no big deal. It still goes in the history books as a win, even if you have to fish it out of the ocean, as one baseball player once said.
That was glorious as well. Madison Bumgarner got bent out of shape over a bunch of nothing earlier this week. I don't even know what it was for, but he was yelling at somebody.
That's par for the course. See, the thing is, like, I kind of had the same thought as you, Corey, that this seems ridiculous because I feel like you can ID players regardless of what their numbers are. But when it comes from Tom Brady, and Tom Brady does not do stuff like this very often, it made me think it's like, for a brief moment, it's like maybe he has a point. And I'm like,
no, he doesn't.
I don't think he has a point.
No, I don't think so either.
I just think it's stupid just on the surface, but I don't think it's stupid for any actual reason. I
don't think it'll have an effect on the game.
I prefer the receivers who were numbers in the 80s. That's all.
Yeah.
Like, receivers already wear numbers in the teens.
And I don't like it.
I got used to it. Like that was another thing that I don't remember if that was really a change or if like receivers just typically didn't, even though the numbers were available to them. But like when I first started like noticing players wearing numbers in the teens, like I think didn't Lavernius Coles wear a number in the teens, or was it Santana Moss? One of them came to Washington and I think was wearing a number in the teens, and it kind of threw me for a loop for a little while. I got used to it.
Santana Moss wore number 89 when he was with Washington.
Yeah, so maybe it was Coles. But I feel like Coles wore a number in the 80s too. It was somebody in that time frame. If it wasn't either of them, it was somebody in that time frame. Regardless, it took me some time to get used to it. I got used to it. It's not a big deal to me.
I don't feel like digging through the days of Washington R-Word's history to think about when Lavernius Coles played for the team. Like
whole back and forth with Moss and Coles with the Jets. It's like trying to decide which one we wanted and which one we didn't.
Well, Santana Moss was better than Lavernius Coles.
He was. So, he absolutely was.
There's no doubt about that.
Was Santana Moss the receiver on both of those throws on Monday night from Mark Brunell?
Yep. Yes, he was.
That was when he became a lot of newer, younger R-Words fans' favorite player, including me for a little while. I was like, that guy's my boy, because he was good. We got some other rule changes to discuss. The booth to official communications are expanded to help out with objective calls. I guess that's on replays or
just to make sure the calls that are obvious on TV get called the right way on the field.
Right.
This is not
kind of
like this. This is objective, so this is not going to help with pass interference calls and calls like that are subjective. This is for the calls that should be cut and dry.
This bothers me in the sense that, like, this is such a half measure to going with the AF and the XFL had in their recent incarnation with the Sky Judge. Put the Sky Judge in.
Can we please give these guys a PS4 controller? Just let them make the calls themselves.
Right. Yeah. It's so easy and obvious. Just do it. You've copied off of the XFL before. The XFL invented Skycam. Okay. And you're like, oh, well, we don't want to do that because they were this league that failed twice. Like, hello? If somebody else invented it and you want to use it, that's fine. just do what makes sense and get the calls right.
Like
I don't care who makes the calls, just get the calls right.
We've got refs and we've got, umpires in baseball because, we didn't have the technology before. Well, guess what? We've got it now.
Yeah.
Use
it's
it.
on HD.
Use it. Please, I'm begging you. Use it.
All the stadiums now have screens that are as big as the field itself. So, like, if you can see on the screen that the call was missed, just fix it.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Why is it so hard to do?
Like, at this point, we don't just have the technology for replay. We have the technology to make the calls from the booth if we want to. Like, we barely need to have refs on the field anymore. All they do is get in the way of the players.
One time, it was a Ravens-Bengals game. There was a fumble, and the referee was trying to get out of the way of the fumble.
I remember
it was like the ball followed him, and he got swallowed up in the pile. The poor guy, he retired after that season.
I remember that play.
So some other rule changes. Onside kicks will limit receiving team to 9 players in the setup zone, which I guess is where the hands team goes to try to field the ball.
Yeah, which fascinated me because I kind of figured that was probably the standard number of players that would be in this zone. That's basically within, I think it's like a 10 and 25 yard area of where the ball's going or whatever. But looking at the numbers over the past either year or 2 years, 83% of the time, the receiving team lines up with 10 players in the setup zone, and the other 13% of the time, they line up with all 11 players in the setup zone, like not even putting somebody deep. So this actually does reduce the number slightly to potentially lead to more onside recoveries, more successful onside tries.
How does it lead to more successful? Oh, never mind. No, the
kicking team. By the kicking team, yes.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, well, wait, you're reducing the number of people receiving the ball doesn't increase the likelihood of them getting it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so because of this change, the Eagles, who had they had proposed a 4th and 15 concept where a team that wants to try and go onside instead would get to line up and try and convert a 4th and 15. They've decided to table that proposal so that they can see the effects of what the league ended up going with. But they could propose it again next offseason.
Well, they can stick that proposal right up their rear ends because that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
I love the
4th
and 15 one.
Dumbass 4th and 15 idea.
You don't like it?
That is my favorite one. I love the 4th and 15.
It is terrible.
I love it.
What's wrong with it, Eric?
It's
why is it so
trash.
You do not. Why you're wrong.
You do not get
like fun.
I do like fun. I also like structure, and this is just preposterous. You don't get to sit there.
Preposterous. Have you seen the ball?
The concept of an onside kick is preposterous.
I agree, and I hate that too. But it is what it is.
Then we got to pick the lesser of two evils, and I would much rather see a 4th, like an actual offensive football play.
Yeah. No. You don't get to sit there and put your offense on the field after your offense just scored. Doesn't work that way. Sorry.
You just give the other team the ball at the 25. Then why are we having this exercise?
You get to try and do it in hockey and in soccer. Actually, no, I guess you don't in hockey, but soccer and lacrosse.
Those are fluid. What are you talking about?
And this guy, a Saints fan, bashing an onside kick. One of the most incredible plays in Super Bowl history was an onside kick by your New Orleans
Well, yeah, that's
Saints.
probably why he prefers the onside kick to the 4th and 15, even though he hates the onside kick.
I don't care for the onside kick, so therefore I don't particularly care about all of these little rules that they're tweaking it with. It just doesn't matter to me that much. I understand why it exists, and it has to exist because you got to give a team a chance to get the ball back. You can't just say, hey, you got outplayed for 4 quarters, therefore you lose. That's not good enough. You got to give them a cheap opportunity to pick up the ball, even though it's a possession-based game and you exchange them. Instead of making them earn a turnover, you give them a gimmick way out. I guess that's what we need because we got to dumb down the game.
You would have loved this. Dumber. You would have loved this back when you had Jay Cutler as your fantasy quarterback, and they were always losing late and probably would have gone for it, and you would have gotten a chance for more points from him. Or garbage time
No,
Jay.
because Jay Cutler would have just thrown the ball in the dirt and they would never have picked up the 4th and 15. What are you talking about?
Eric, I think you need to go yell at some kid to get off your lawn.
Nah, this is dumb. This is a dumb idea. I hate this idea. I think it's the worst.
The whole thing is, it's all ridiculous, right? Like, I don't know why they don't use a round ball, for example. You could use a round ball, but no, they have this sloppy.
You could, but it wouldn't be as aerodynamic.
I agree that it's that the game itself is very strange, but there still needs to be some level of structure. And just saying, hey,
I don't see how a 4th and 15 is unstructured.
Yeah, what's unstructured about it? Are they saying no? If you want to do an onside, you have to go out in the parking lot instead.
So basically,
that would be unstructured.
Why would I bother fielding a defense then? If I could just say, hey, Patrick Mahomes, go throw the ball and pick up 4th and 15 every game. We only need 11 guys to win. Why wouldn't I do that?
Because you're not going to convert 4th and 15 every time.
But you don't care because, hey, my defense sucks anyway, so I might as well just try to make it take it here the entire game.
I don't
think
that's that bad of a strategy.
Go for it. I would enjoy that. I would enjoy that.
Like that high school coach who doesn't punt, right? Let's just say, you know what? We're just never kicking off again.
Because I would laugh my ass off when it doesn't work, and now the other team has a short field.
Yeah, but the other team doesn't care if they have a short field because, hey, you're going to score anyway. That defense stinks. I don't dig it. I don't dig it at all. It's dumb.
I love the 4th and 15. I hope that eventually they adopt it, but it's not happening this year. So
too short, right? And maybe it should be more punitive if you don't make it, right? Like if the other team, if you go for this 4th and 15 and you fall a yard short, the other team should get the ball 1st and goal at the 10 or something like that.
I wouldn't say that, but I don't think that you should necessarily get credit for the yards you pick up. Like if you don't get it, the other team should get the ball at the 35, not at the. What would it be? The 49.
Okay, how about this idea? If you don't get it, your quarterback is disqualified from the game. Let's just make it all crazy.
That's not a thing. You can have anybody be the quarterback.
The guy that's out there,
eligible number.
The guy that's out there playing quarterback in that situation, if he doesn't get it done, he's disqualified for the game.
What if they run a Philly special? Right?
Doesn't matter. The guy.
You'll start having like reliever quarterbacks, like we have in Major League Baseball, where you have a specialist come in for that one specific.
Fine. Do that. I don't care. Make it dumb. This is a stupid rule, so let's just make it as stupid as possible. It'll be hilarious. Patrick Mahomes is out for the game. He got disqualified because he didn't complete a 4th and 15 in the second quarter.
Should have him wear tinfoil hats and bras too. Change the ball with a balloon.
Sure, why not? Let's just do all of that. And let's have hugs instead of tackles. Let's just completely upend football.
Tackles are. You gotta hug them first.
Yeah, we can have a new anthem by CeeLo Green because we all love his hit song.
I mean, I still prefer that anthem over the national anthem, but that's for reasons unknown. We'll move on. I think we got some other rules to discuss.
Yes, there are a couple.
No more preseason overtime. I think that's a good thing. Preseason is meant to get ready for the season.
Preseason overtime.
There is, but most coaches, if they were in a position where they could tie late, they wouldn't go they wouldn't kick the extra point for a tie. They would go for 2. So in effect, there really wasn't. But now, if a game does end in a tie, we're just going to forego it, which I think I agree is the right decision.
There's still a possibility that if the score is 7-7 heading into the fourth quarter and just nobody scores again, then you'd have to play the overtime.
Right.
So it's worth it to get rid of it.
So is preseason overtime not eliminated?
Yes, it is. No. Eric is saying that while there was the situation where if you scored a touchdown late, you might not kick the extra point to tie it and send it overtime. You go for 2. There was still the potential that 2 teams could go into the fourth quarter tied, not score at all in the fourth quarter, and then it doesn't matter, the whole 2-point versus 1-point conversion
your intentions
thing.
don't
You're going to go to overtime. Now you won't.
Yep.
I think they should get. What if they just get rid of all the preseason games and just have 20 regular season games?
Why not have the players wear tinfoil hats and bras? Let's just go
they already wear foam and aluminum hats.
That's true.
So, and shoulder pads made out of whatever those are made out of.
And I guess since we've wasted enough time talking about rules, there are some others that we're just not going to talk about because we don't care. So let's finish up. Our last topic is on Alex Smith, who has decided that he is retiring from football. Smith was drafted as the number 1 overall pick in 2005.
Much to Aaron Rodgers' chagrin.
Yeah, out of Utah, playing for Urban Meyer. Interesting how that worked out.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Urban Meyer coached at Utah, and he coached Alex Smith.
I did not know that.
Well, now you know.
Now I know. The more you know.
So I'll let you guys start. Give me some thoughts on Alex Smith and his career and all that stuff.
He was terrible, but the 49ers never should have gotten rid of him.
Thank you, Sean.
Wait, who said that?
Sean said that back with the whole, Colin Kaepernick took over.
He didn't say that.
He said multiple times that he was not a good quarterback, and then other times he'd say that the 49ers shouldn't have gotten rid of him.
Colin Kaepernick was transcendent, right?
For a few minutes, yeah.
Yeah, he was, but Sean would hate on Alex Smith's ability as a quarterback, and then, shortly thereafter would talk about how the 49ers never should have gotten rid of him. So, yeah.
Well, that was when Kaepernick started to stink.
Right. I still kind of make fun of Sean for that, because
it was all those Mighty Wings commercials. Remember those?
Oh my God.
From McDonald's.
Yes, the Mighty Wings.
Anyway.
I have an issue with anybody who says Alex Smith was a bust.
I do too.
He was not a bust. He had a good career. I mean,
it took him a little while to blossom, but that was less to do with him.
Incompetent coaches.
Yeah.
In San Francisco.
How long did it take for him to have the same offensive scheme in back-to-back seasons, or much less 3 seasons in a row?
Didn't you have Mike Nolan out there as a coach?
Yeah.
Mike Singletary was the coach. He was a great player, but not a very good coach. He's not a head coach. Like what? I mean, you can't expect a guy to have success in a situation where nobody has success ever.
Yeah, not only did they have different coaches every year, but the players around him were trash. So he wasn't exactly set up to have any kind of success early in his career, and yet he wound up having a really solid career, one to be proud of, one that anybody who knocks him for it is a hater.
And a fool.
Yeah, Alex Smith, when I think of him at this point, I think of a dude who I've never seen more perseverance in an individual, because like you guys said, he was number 1 pick by the 49ers, and he absolutely looked like a bust for the first 5 or 6 years of his career. He was having a terrible start to his career. For 6 seasons is a while in the NFL. If you're not good in year 6, people have usually given up on you by that point. But people also understood that Alex Smith was not in a very good situation in San Francisco. And then Jim Harbaugh gets hired. He actually understood his quarterback skill set. He understood his limitations as well. And so he built the scheme around that. And Smith played pretty well that first year in 2011. He had a great playoff game against the Saints. Broke my heart. And then the next year...
That was an amazing game. Just objectively, as a football fan, that game was amazing. Like, I get that Eric, as a really hardcore Saints fan, especially at that time, you can't really. It's harder to appreciate that game for what it was. But that was one of the greatest playoff games in NFL history.
I was watching that in the dining hall, and some of the dining hall workers there's a lot of Saints fans in Atlanta for some reason. So like some of them were Saints fans, and then some people hated the Saints. Like there were people yelling at each other and clapping and stuff. It was for real during that game.
Yeah, like I said, won't watch it. Never will. Don't care. Never watching that game.
I would rewatch that game anytime I see it come on TV. That was that good of a game.
I can't.
But I understand why you.
I have never felt worse as a football fan than after that game. That was
okay. Well, this was only a week prior to my lowest moment as a football fan. So,
Hey man, we all have that moment. But anyway, but then he came back the next year and was actually having the best year of his career playing for the 49ers. He was balling out. And then he gets a concussion, loses his job to injury while playing great football to Colin Kaepernick, and then gets shipped out of town like he was yesterday's news, sent to the Chiefs, plays well there. They say, hey, you're not that good. You're not good enough. We'll draft your replacement. So he balls out his last year there. So that way he ups his value, ends up in Washington with a fat new deal, which is great for him. He wins some games for Washington, Then he suffers the worst injury we've probably ever seen on a football field, almost dies, and still somehow manages to come back and play football, wins Comeback Player of the Year, played decently, and I frankly think, I agree with Evan, that award should be named after him at this point. That is the Alex Smith Comeback Player of the Year in my mind. That's how I will refer to it till the end of time. I mean, that man has been through it all, and he deserves to have a happy retirement. I'm glad that he managed to get through this season healthy. I'm sort of relieved that he's decided to hang it up because I didn't want to spend another year or two worrying about whether Alex Smith was going to end up sustaining a severe injury again because of the condition of his leg. But, man, just a guy that I thought was going to be the most forgettable number one pick of my lifetime 10 years ago, he definitely ain't that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Not even close.
There are a couple of injuries. I won't name them, but there are a couple injuries in NFL history I would probably rank ahead of his as far as the worst ever. But leg injury, yeah. And, that's coming from a fan of the team that had Joe Theismann. This was the worst leg injury we've seen on a football field. Regardless, yeah, I mean, I that summarization of his career is perfect. I love what you said. He exemplified perseverance. I've never seen a player exhibit that character trait the way that Alex Smith did over the course of his career. He's got a whole lot to hang his hat on and absolutely nothing to be ashamed of concerning his time in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, he was a good player, and if you draft somebody, you want him to be a good player. Expecting the guy to be a Hall of Famer, I think is a bit much. He was a good starter in the NFL for a long time, and he had a good career. I guess it was kind of unfortunate that he kept getting replaced by, sort of legendary NFL figures by Colin Kaepernick, who's now famous for, what he did before the game started, and then by Patrick Mahomes, who's incredible, and then I guess by Dwayne Haskins or somebody.
Well,
that one at least was because he got hurt. Like nobody sat there and said Dwayne Haskins is better than Alex Smith.
Yeah, so I'm just glad he's healthy and alive. Just he almost died. I don't know how does anybody go from almost dying to playing in the NFL? Like that is incredible. To
letting Aaron Donald jump on your back for a piggyback ride. Are you kidding me?
We know you almost lost your leg by playing this sport. So now when you finally come back, here's Aaron Donald.
just demanding a piggyback ride from you.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
that may be like my stomach was in my throat on that play. I was like, what the hell? Get off of him.
I was like, stop it. Don't allow this.
I don't like this. I don't like football anymore right now.
That was just the worst. My one of my favorite moments from Alex Smith was when I don't know if Evan, if you saw this. It was back during the 2017 Super Bowl. The game was being played in Minneapolis, and so the media was heading out to Minneapolis. I think it was a snowstorm because of course it was. But they were in the hotel nearby or whatever, and Dan Patrick and his crew were there, and Andrew Perloff, who's one of the producers on that show, he put a helmet on, and he was trying to catch a pass from Alex Smith, and he was probably about 10 yards away or so, and somebody was
deep.
And had been drinking. Yeah, and not just the decision for his actions, but his words as well. Mm-hmm. Somebody said, "Don't you think it's probably a good idea to back up a little bit more? Because Alex Smith's about to throw you a pass." And Perloff says, "Well, this isn't Patrick Mahomes here. This is Alex Smith. I'm not worried about his arm." And Smith, being as polite as he is, didn't say anything, but you could see in his face that pissed him off.
He should have.
Yeah, and he reared back and he unloaded a missile at Perloff, and it knocked him on his ass. He did not catch the ball. It hit him right in the helmet, and he fell over. And I was like, yeah, that's a professional quarterback you're talking to, buddy.
This guy plays in the NFL, right? You're just some guy who produces a radio show. What are you doing running your mouth? Like, just imagine you decide to talk about, some backup NFL safety somewhere, And you're like, well, you can't tackle that hard. What are you talking about? He's going to light you up. I mean, really.
I have not seen that video. I'm going to have to see if I can find
glorious.
that clip because I need to see that. I need that in my life.
It's amazing.
It was greatness.
Yeah. Like, there's a reason that he plays in the NFL and you don't. I mean, come on. Come on. He can't throw that hard. He's just a professional football thrower for his job.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh man, that was greatness. I love that. Love that moment. That was excellent.
That was good stuff.
So I think that's it for our football topics. Unless you guys have anything you want to add or something that came through or anything like that.
No.
The only other thing I remember about Alex Smith was Thanksgiving 2011. He was on the 49ers and they were playing the Ravens that night. And the Ravens defensive line and Terrell Suggs in particular were just unstoppable. The 49ers went in a max protect. They only would have 2 people running routes. They still couldn't stop Terrell Suggs. They'd have 3 tight ends and all of them are in and stuff. Terrell Suggs, 3 sack fumbles of Alex Smith that night. None of them were recovered by the Ravens. But Ravens roll. So.
All right. Well, that does it for our list of topics on the show. So you guys have any shout-outs or anything you want to get off your chest before we get out of here?
Shout out to my fantasy baseball team because they stay hitting home runs for me. And Mookie Betts is back tonight, batting leadoff for the Dodgers after getting hit by a pitch earlier in the week. So, and shout out to to Gleyber Torres, who was having some trouble buttoning his buttons on his jersey a moment ago and finally figured it out.
I can't give people too hard of a time for buttoning buttons because just like saying it, I can't hardly do it either. Yeah, my fingers are all long and awkward. So like my dress shirts, I put them on over my head like a t-shirt, and then just button the top 2. But it takes forever if I were to button all 10 buttons or whatever.
I'm glad we had this moment to discuss that.
Yes.
That was excellent content.
It's just as good as the rest of the content.
Yes, it is. I agree. I was actually being serious. I enjoyed that little aside about buttoning things. I think it's important.
This is what we do.
Yeah, we get a little levity here. It's all good.
Yeah,
so
the show's almost half as long as next week's show's going to be. So
yes, but next week's show is going to be loaded with probably just us sitting around waiting for something to happen.
Right, yeah.
And then it happening.
As thrilling as it is to watch people read names off of an index card.
But we'll react to it.
5 hours.
Yes.
We had a pretty good show last time, I thought. I thought we filled up that dead time with good conversation. I thought it was fun. I'm really looking forward to it. We got a ticker that we put together. Of course, Eric's video stays freezing, and the audio video syncing issues are a constant issue for us. So we are going to try to have video for the podcast, but we will also have some still photos of ourselves on standby in case the syncing gets way out of whack, and in case our videos freeze in unbecoming positions. We'll be able to throw an actual becoming still photo of ourselves on there as a bit of a save.
Yep, just to cover up our silly faces with our more serious faces, I guess. But that'll do it for this show. We'll be back next week, as Corey mentioned, with the NFL draft in full, live streamed. We're looking forward to it. We did it last year, had a great time.
Round.
Just the first round,
yes. Yeah, the first day. Let's be clear. First day of the draft. So we're not going to be here Friday and Saturday and Sunday or however long it goes. That's we don't have time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Maybe sometime in the future.
So we'll try to weave in some other news and events that happen maybe before the draft starts if we can or if we need to. But our primary focus is going to be on 1 through 32 being selected in the draft. Can't wait for that. Hope you guys tune in for that. You can email us at thesportsballers@gmail.com if you've got any questions, want to contribute to our mailbag, which we didn't have any of today. So for you few listeners out there, don't be shy. You can
our regular mailbag participants, y'all need to, to say y'all need to step up is an understatement. Y'all need to step, okay? Just step somewhere. Somebody say something.
I'm sure that'll encourage them to sign right up to send us stuff with Evan crabbing at them. Anyway, you can find our podcasts on basically
Evan's
all the places.
over here
Apple,
like, get
Spotify.
on my lawn.
Yeah, Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon Podcasts. We're there, so check us out there. You can follow us on Twitter as well at Sportsballers18. And you can follow us individually. Cory is at Cory Puffett. I'm at Quagmire67. And Evan is at Evan_Ash13. That's all we got for this week. We hope to see you next week. My name is Eric. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you around. Take it easy.